Right. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are in the country. Just want to say um, thank you for joining today's session and welcome. I'm Scott Fiaschetti from Geopath, and as always, I'm joined here today with Brian Shopper from Geopath as well, who's listening in on the background and will be helping out monitoring questions and answers and etc. But today I wanted to just talk about a little bit about what we're going to be covering in today's session and a little bit about the process for the rest of today. So as you probably are aware, as you've signed up for this session today, we want to talk about our place-based measurement. As you may know, and as you may have seen, if you've been in the Insight Suite recently, a lot of the inventory for place-based has been mapped for a little bit now. And over the past week or so, core audiences for some of our members are going into the Insight Suite with many more to come and with full audiences to be coming in a couple of weeks. And when I say core audiences, I'm talking about those persons 0+, 5+, 18+, 21+. So you may have noticed over the past week or so for some members that their those audiences measures are available in the Insight Suite as well as the API. And then we'll talk about why in a moment. But what we want to do today is, given that, and we're really super excited, we know it's been a long process of getting to this point, we do want to make sure as we're preparing and as the place-based measurement is expanding within the tools, we want to make sure everybody has an understanding of just how we look at place-based media, how we measure it, and really look at like how do we define it? What's some of the key terminology of the different types of formats when we're looking at any given facing or any given unit? And more importantly, we want to be able to answer any questions available as well. I just want to check. Is everybody able to hear me? I just saw a chat that somebody's having issues. Is anybody else having issues? Can you? Okay. Okay. It does seem like others are able to hear. I'll try to get closer to the microphone. Thank you for everybody for pinging about the issues. Cool. Great. Sorry. So just to jump back, and whoever the person that did ping us, if you're still having issues, please let us know again. So sorry, just to jump back into it, wanted to make sure we're giving everybody an overview of place-based media as it's starting to come into the tool. Want to make sure everybody's understanding key terminology, and more importantly, want to be here to answer as many questions as we can about it, so everybody's feeling comfortable as an industry as this inventory starts to get into the tool. One thing I do want to say is related to questions. If you can use the Q&A widget for questions, it helps us track questions better and able to understand. Sometimes if you put them in the chat, we lose it. So I just want to make sure we're getting everybody's questions and answering them. So without further ado, I'm really excited to welcome someone I think many of you know throughout the industry, Julie Falkers, who currently is VP of Out-of-Home Media Solutions for Intermix. And Intermix is our key development partner on this and has been very instrumental in helping us get this place-based effort off the ground. So I just, without further ado, want to welcome Julie and say thank you for joining us today. And I'm going to hand it off to her and let her kind of take us through the overall process. And we'll pause throughout and answer any questions as they start to come in. But with that, I'd just like to hand it off to Julie.
Great, thank you, Scott. Can everybody hear me okay? I guess, Scott, if you can answer that on behalf. Great. So thank you again. And I was looking down the list of attendees, and it is quite fun to see so many familiar names, people that I worked with directly during my time over at Omnicom and OMG. Hi, guys, as well as a lot of the folks I've gotten to work with more closely during my time at Intermix, which has been really rewarding to learn about different parts of their industries and really find ways to best implement these solutions from the data and technology side, and then also getting feedback on the software itself. So if we want to dive in, Brian, go to the next. So this is going to be familiar for any of the place-based members on the call. This is the foundation of the introduction we provide to potential new members to talk about what it is that we measure, all the different types of data that we collect that goes into the process, as well as what that process is itself. So one of the things I think is such a valuable part of the Geopath methodology is all of the different data points that flow in to really create a comprehensive measurement solution. So represented here is in this list is some of what you would expect to see as the traditional roadside measurement, but a lot of this also flows into the place-based solution. So where we look at the same types of demographic data so that we can create a holistic audience indexing across roadside and place-based, all of those sources are coming in, as well as the first party data that we can look at. If something's auditable, if it's able to be validated, we're able to bring in first party data to make this even a richer solution. So it's the core is the mobile location data that helps us see who is in and traveling in and around the places that we're measuring, layering in all of what we know about the market, about the population, the audience consumer behavior, and where it's possible, the first party data. And we'll go into that more as we continue through the process. Where we started and where a lot of you are familiar and where Scott alluded to how long it has taken for us to get to this point is really the pilot that began a few years ago. And it really revealed a lot of the complexity of place-based measurement and why it took so many years of how long place-based has been under the out-of-home umbrella, but taken to get to a comprehensive solution is how different people act and behave and spend time in all of the different types of places. So I really like to start talking about where we started in the pilot to say that was really about evaluating how do we recognize what are the different attributes of a place, and then all of the placement types that could exist within each place that affect the opportunities to see. How many times is someone going to get to see a sign in a particular terminal in an airport versus the entrance of a mall versus at the register at a gas station. All of these are very different experiences, very different types of consumer behavior and dwell time. So that's really what has taken us from the beginning of this effort to this point today, is being able to catalog what we can observe about those places, what we can glean from the onboarding experience, which we're about to go into a little bit, with each of our place-based partners to make sure that we're cataloging and calculating the opportunity to see and the likelihood to see based on the attributes of each type of place and media placement that really makes sense. With the goal being, how in this first phase of place-based, how do we develop the scale to say, yes, we can offer a place-based solution across the breadth of out-of-home opportunities? It really had to come down to a lot of data and math and applying some algorithms by people that are smarter than me on the data science side, but all coming down to cataloging all of these attributes that we are all familiar with, anybody that has bought or sold place-based. I guess I would like to open it up before we get too much deeper, because I covered a lot of different concepts really quickly. If there's any additional questions, or do you want to, or Scott, do you want me to keep me rolling ahead until somebody asks it through the little widget?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there are questions just yet, and I think we'll do just what you did. We'll pause throughout, and if there's one that's in the moment, I'll try to interject at the right moment.
Great. So where we started in that pilot from, you know, a few hundred media placements and a few hundred locations, we end up today at over 300 placement type combinations that we've measured and developed that methodology for. Whoa.
Sorry about that. My bad.
It's okay. So this is just a screenshot of kind of where we sit today. And this is having just filtered on place-based in the Insight Suite to show you what we've loaded so far. And I think I'm excited that it's very representative of lots of different places and operators and partners that we've onboarded through this process. So speaking of the process, let's chat a little bit about what it is that we do. And here I'll probably focus a little bit on the role that Intermix has as a partner of Geopath, because sometimes there is some ambiguity. Who are these people? So Intermix is the underlying data processor and provider of the mobile location data, as well as the onboarding of the places. So where Intermix got its start really was in geospatial information systems, GIS. So we have a team that is really experienced and educated in how to analyze geolocation data and align that, drawing polygons and creating the geofences that that really define the visitor counts that flow into the impressions methodology. So first, we start by getting the list of places with latitude and longitude and all of the attributes that we can about the place. And the following slides will talk about each of those attributes, as well as, and so the first step is our GIS team actually creating those geofences. What we found is that the quote unquote out of the box polygons through some of the other POI providers here in SafeGraph and other people that you may have heard of, is they're more computerized or automated in their creation of the polygons, and it ends up being very inconsistent with how that's applied. We did a test on KFCs, and like for an example, it counted all of the traffic of Madison Square Garden for the KFC within MSG. That's where we would want to pare that back a bit and create a realistic visitor count for how do we figure out what is the actual visitation of a KFC within a larger place. So just as an example. And then we look at the inventory spreadsheet again, as we go through the examples of all of the factors that go in, we were looking, we guide the place-based members through that process because it can be detailed. It can be ways that they haven't thought of characterizing their media placements in the past. So we help to guide them through that process. And then the initial base impressions processing occurs. And Intermix provides that to the place-based members as a first opportunity to review, ask questions, potentially tweak how those attributes have affected the impressions calculation, where something maybe in the same place looks a little bit off. We have an opportunity to review, approve, iterate on those. And to Scott's point earlier about where you might see some operators' impressions already in the Insight Suite and some not. That's for a couple different factors, but it could be that we're still working with that operator, partnering with them to adjust and make sure that the methodology is implemented as correctly as possible based on their understanding of their medium. So that is sometimes where there is a difference in the timing, at what point someone was onboarded and how those factors may be adjusted. And all of those partners that we have on the call today certainly understand that process. You want to continue? We'll start diving in to how we actually start looking at all of the attributes that I keep mentioning. So we have a big giant spreadsheet that has, as I go through this really represents all of the columns and fields that we enter and that we guide the place-based members to help us provide what the attributes of each place look like. So you start obviously with the market. What do we know about the market and the population, the characteristics of the potential audiences that could be visiting a place? That helps inform and the calculations of those visitor counts to fill in the gaps between, obviously mobile device data doesn't give you 100% of whoever is visiting a place. So recognizing that helps us inform those counts. So as I was mentioning, that first step is really just establishing the address, the latitude, longitude of the place, reviewing what does that place look like in aerial view, in the real world, evaluating the aspects of the place itself. How many entrances are there? How many floors are there? Is it an airport that has X number of terminals that would affect the likelihood for any particular visitor to go down in one concourse versus another? These are all aspects of the place that we're gathering data on. And here's an example of a couple actual geofences that were captured that show how some of them might be more complex than others, and to address some of the questions that come up around property area versus building area, to ensure that we're capturing the most device activity that is most likely visiting the place. We do extend that out, and it was a Geopath decision to use the property area in the methodology, thinking that you want to make sure you're capturing the likely visitors, that if someone's in the parking lot of a Walmart and we can see a device ping there, the likelihood that they went inside the Walmart is pretty high. So it casts a slightly wider net in terms of the likelihood that anyone was visiting the targeted place. And obviously there are more complex examples of that involve more curves versus straight lines in evaluating where is it that you want to capture the visitation as a whole. And some of that has to do with how broad the network is. Sometimes there's media placements throughout much more broadly over a place than others. And this is, again, where we start looking at not only the attributes and what does a place look like from the outside, but what are those characteristics on the inside that could affect the likelihood that someone sees any particular unit. And number of floors, number of entrances and exits. Those are the types of the operating hours of the place will affect how the mobile device location, data is captured, and what kind of those the interior signs get credit for. So obviously, if a place isn't open, it can't be receiving exposures. So as well as the illumination of the sign itself. So those are the place attributes that we capture. And then we start looking at the structure itself. The size of the structure, the position, and this really goes into the placement type. Is it in this is obviously an airport example, but placement type is probably the single most impactful characteristic in the likelihood to see in a place. So we'll get into that a little bit more in some of the other examples I have, but let's say a placement type in a gas station could be on, at the pump versus at the cash register in the convenience store part of the gas station versus at the, ticketing area of an airport, or on a particular gate, at a particular gate waiting area. All of those placement types inform that, as well as layering in that number of floors, number of entrances and exits of the place. So we start drilling down into that opportunity and likelihood to see. And this is where most people start thinking about the main characteristics of a specific piece of media. And there is some different terminology that people familiar in the Insight Suite have noticed surely, things called frames and spots. So in measuring, we have to go down to the smallest level, but at the frame level is actually the size of the potential ad unit. If we can just keep going forward, because it kind of is some more context once we start getting into the additional options. That within a frame, you could have a, you know, a standard frame, but then within that, you could have different versions of a layout. So let's say, for example, if this was CNN Airport, and there are ads showing at the same time as content, this could be one layout. And say that layout is on the screen 50% of the time. And the other 50% of the time, it's full screen ads. We are able to capture and catalog down to that level. Like, we basically had to build methodology for the most complex situation and the most variable placements of ads within a particular frame. I will say most of what we've onboarded is a single full screen use of the layout, but we have had a few that are multi layout frames, as well as multi ad unit frames within a layout. So we do have all of that, those options available. And that brings us down to the face level, which is actually that specific ad unit. And one level below that we measure is the spot. So a face really captures that lowest level unit size. Is it interactive? Is it full motion? Does it have sound enabled? That's where we start getting into, from the frame, the layout, the face, down to that. And then the spot is the lowest level, which would be, is that ad static of it? Or in most cases in digital, is it 8 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds? Is it variable? You want to measure what a 15-second spot looks like versus a 30. And that's where we measure all the way down to the spot, because it does affect the likelihood to see a particular ad unit. And continue. I think this really drives home the shift in historical limitations on the counts that were provided in place-based measurement or in buying place-based media or selling in the past, versus all of those things that we just talked about. So as in this example, there's 5 different ad units, 5 different layouts or frames on this in this example. Historically, all we would have been able to really look at is a monthly average circulation for a mall. And it would be up to probably the advertiser or the buyer to try to figure out, well, how do I apply, what is my, you know, circulation for each of these signs independently? And now we are measuring each of these individually. So you can look at this, the example on the further left-hand, kind of upper left-hand side. You actually would get credit on this sign for exposure to multiple floors. An overhead unit has a different visibility and elevation. Elevation is one of the attributes we capture on the screen level. And the number of floors would affect the circulation, or how that would be applied to the impressions measurement on that unit. Going down kind of in a counterclockwise way, I guess, that the next one we call freestanding. It has a different visibility likelihood than, say, the interior wall unit on the other side of the Una de 50. And then the directory unit could be given additional VAI factors because it has non-advertising content in it. So if there's interactive content or non-advertising content, a reason why someone would go to have additional viewership of a unit, we factor that into what's called an engagement factor, to make sure we're giving credit to that there's something contextual, that the consumer has a reason to go look at it, versus something that's just purely advertising. We know all of your creative is amazing and it's compelling and engaging in and of itself, but one of the advantages of having these types of placements is being able to give credit where credit is due for that type of interactivity.
Hey, Julie, just wanted to jump in with a question that we received.
Absolutely.
So this goes back to when we were looking at that slide of the, you know, how we outlined the area, the geography.
Yes.
So the question basically asking, you know, when we determine the geography of a place, would we ever consider including the streets that immediately border the property?
Yes, that's a great question, and one that we've been working with the team at Geopath, with Dylan, as well as Kevin Romero on the traditional inventory side, to determine the best way of capturing those. One of the more recent determinations that has come up is, if the circulation that you want to capture is primarily pedestrian, not the visitors of the place, but you want to capture more of the pedestrian traffic, that we should onboard it as roadside, actually, to get that. So like there's been examples recently where, let me go back. Yes, we do look at the, we can expand out those geofences to make sure they're capturing the sidewalk, but there could be limitations in dwell time. That's some of the iterations that we've gone over in the last few weeks or couple months, has been looking at how do we adjust the dwell time of saying, yes, someone was visiting this place, or no, they weren't. And we've been decreasing what those thresholds are to make sure we're capturing as much as that pass by traffic as possible. So I think that we are more accurately providing measurement for those locations that could be showing to exterior. However, going back to what I was just saying, that there could be locations that we deem, and in partnership with the place-based partner, to say, you know what, it's less important to capture who's going inside this place versus the pure pedestrian traffic, and more, especially in more urban environments, that is more relevant, captured with the road segment data collection versus the place-based data collection. So it's definitely where we're looking to improve and tweak based on the judgment calls of our members.
Great, thank you.
Of course. These are a couple other examples. I mentioned placement type as being so key in as we apply these factors in the calculations. So this is just another example. The idea that if a screen is located at a bar and the place type is bar, the idea that everyone will go to the bar at least once. That's why you're there, right? So probability of exposure in this case would be at least 100% for each of these signs. If it is in a bathroom, it might be a probability of exposure of 50% based on the gender basis, or the idea that everybody goes to the bathroom at least once, but you're not going to see the signs in both bathrooms while you're there. So just as an example of how placement type that would affect the calculation, where you start at average daily visitors and then start applying the math and those factors based on those placement type attributes. And again, looking at an open floor placement in an airport, this might be given 100% probability for this concourse, but then the visitor rate across the entire airport would be divided down based on the number of terminals or concourses in that place. And that's all a part of the auditing that our GIS team completes, is cataloging all of those details from independent sources. So that really kind of concludes where we go. And as I was mentioning, this kind of linear approach of, we start at the venue, at that place, and how we're measuring and capturing the activity within the place. Then looking at all of the opportunities to see at the screen level, applying Geopath's research on likelihood to see based on the size, the unit length, if it's digital spot, the illumination, and all of those factors, the dwell time as applied by placement, place type, data, as well as what we've observed in the mobile location data. And that all flows through to get to that spot impression. And that is that lowest level measurement that's provided. And that's the weekly spot impressions, is the base of what's presented in the Insight Suite. And then that gets us straight into some of the screenshots of the Insight Suite itself, of how you would access it if you wanted to filter down. I think it's a benefit actually of this application that you don't have to filter by place-based. If you first wanted to see how your audience could be served across the out-of-home landscape, we can do that here. Or of course, if you know that you're looking to target, you're looking up your own media, you're looking to see how your place-based opportunities compare with others, you can go straight to filtering that there. Or if you're more on the advertising and buying side, looking to filter on place-based immediately and honing that down to the type of place that the type of environment that you really want to choose for your advertisers.
And I just wanted to jump in and say, we just included a couple of screenshots here. Next week when we do our foundational session, so next Thursday, I believe we have a slide coming up just reminding everybody of that. We'll dig a little bit deeper into how you can access some of the place-based metrics and filter down and really cover a lot of that there. Just wanted to in case anybody had any questions, they were excited and wanted to jump in right away, start
Right.
looking at stuff, wanted to just include a couple high-level screenshots of where you could find this in the Insight Suite.
And I will say that as we get users in the platform on both the operator side and the agency advertiser side, we want to make sure that we're providing all of the place-based data points that are relevant. So it is a work in progress where we've slowly but surely been integrating more of those into the inventory detail sheets, into the columns that are available to review for sorting and evaluating all of the different media opportunities. So you'll see here whenever we go into it, and maybe Scott and you and I will huddle before the meeting next week to make sure we're highlighting those additions. So digital attributes that are so critical in being able to filter on what's full motion, what not, those types of things to really highlight the value that place-based networks can drive, as well as how it fits into a broader strategy.
Great, cool. Well, we wanted to, again, the goal of today was to really start the conversation, right? I know, while some of the pilot members and some of our other members who do have, place-based inventory have been a little bit more deeply involved in this, wanted to make sure all of our members are starting to hear about place-based and understanding it. And like we want set up front, like understanding the terminology. So do want to pause and just, if there's any questions, please feel free to ask them. And as always, if you think of one after the session, you can always reach out to us at geekout@geopath.org. I'm going to show that email address again in a few slides coming up. But again, I just want to give some time for everyone to answer any questions. So as you're thinking about questions, first of all, I want to just point out again, we're going to do the foundational session next week. So September 3rd from 1 to 2 Eastern time. We'll send out, we've been sending out notices in our newsletter. We'll send out a few more before then to remind everybody. But that's where in particular, we're going to talk about any changes to the Insight Suite overall, but we do want to use that session to focus in more on place-based. So as Julie was saying, how do you get the value out of the data that's in there already? And how do you find what you need in the Insight Suite regarding place-based? And again, we'll answer any other questions you may have and talk about other features of the Insight Suite, but very more specifically on place-based. And then want to also announce that, if you want to check any of our old webinars out, you can go here to this is our website, go to the Geek Out tab and scroll down to our out-of-home office hours. All of the most recent ones are here as thumbnails, but then you can click here where it says click here to see the entire library of webinars. We've done a lot of webinars over the past couple of months, really on helping members understand. We did a panel on with some agency experts talking about how they're navigating COVID-19, and as well as with some of our out-of-home operators, how they're navigating it as well.
I see a question here that I think it's a great one and very relevant, obviously, today. So how are impression counts impacted by COVID in many of the venue due to closings or limited capacity being addressed? So it's a great question, because we are using the same methodology that Geopath has historically used in providing the base impressions, which is using the prior year calendar data. So the measurement that's coming out now for place-based is based on 2019 data that's been collected. However, as Geopath has provided the impressions variation dashboard for roadside, in the coming weeks, probably, I would probably guess 3 to 4 weeks from the initial launch of all of the place-based impressions, we'll be providing a similar type of review to show that impressions variation on a place type. So it will be also on a market level and a place type level to show that week by week variance of what we've been observing in those places. We have been running some with some partners separately visit counts to be able to show what's happening in their specific places. But from a Geopath perspective, with the main product being the impressions, looking at that impressions variation dashboard when that's available for place-based is how that will be approached as well.
Great.
Kelly, hi. Nice to see your name pop up. Kelly and I used to work together. And yes, we are, this was a question regarding airport. We have onboarded Clear Channel's airports. We're working with the other airport providers to do the same. We're just further along on the Clear Channel side. Same question for malls. So we do have Simon, Macerich have been and are being onboarded and finalized. Some of the others have not yet. That's where I really think, from the buyer perspective, if there's a benefit to you, which obviously I'm probably a little biased, I think that there is, in having a single kind of methodology applied across place types and operators. That's where I would have to, encourage you to ask for that as well. So there are some other mall operators. I'm sorry if I'm forgetting them on the fly here. That are PIMP members.
But I think the point is a good point too. There's so many, and you talked about it early in the session as well. There's just such a range of place types, right, and place venues that we're able to measure and include in this measurement. And the wider we can get, the more different types, just the more comprehensive measurement becomes overall. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, and it I was just going to chime in that you can start to see, and any of the inventory we've already onboarded, even as the impressions are being finalized internally, are available in the Insight Suite, I'm pretty sure. So you can start to see the different operators that are represented there as well. Right,
exactly. Cool. So just again, as we're winding down, I want to in case you missed it, we talked about this in probably the last couple webinars, and we did some specific webinars on each of these products. But I just want to remind everybody, and just if you haven't seen it yet, we've put out 2 new data products, again, with the help of Intermx, our daily mobility dashboard and our impressions variation dashboard. The daily mobility dashboard came out on April 14th, and it provides that day-to-day monitoring of population activity at the CBSA level and state level, as well as and Julie again referred to this earlier in the session, the impression variation dashboard, which helps members understand at a market area by format what's the variation against the expected impression delivery. And that came out on May 15th as well. And there's a host of support materials. If you do have questions, if it's the first time you're starting to dig into any of these dashboards, there's specifically for the impression variation dashboard, there's some documentation on how to interpret the reports. And for both products, there's FAQs as well as a methodology overview documents that you can download within the tool, or you can also find them in our Geek Out library, as well as on our homepage of our website as well. There's also some video tutorials along with each of the products as well. as well as more in-depth webinars that we did that answer more questions. So just wanted to point those out and remind everybody about those as well. And then there's also other decks that we've been producing weekly. So every Monday we send out a DMA deck that is tracking kind of using the daily mobility dashboard, but at the DMA level, tracking that for all the DMAs. Originally we were putting it out for the top DMAs, but that got expanded to all DMAs, as well as every Thursday, which will be coming out probably in a few hours. As soon as we get off this call, we'll finalize it and get it out, but the mobility information at a national level. So that's a shorter deck that we put out every Thursday. So you can get those in via our newsletter. So if you're not receiving our newsletter, you can go to our website and sign up. Or you can also just get those, if you're a member, you can log into the Geek Out library and download those as well from there. And all the past reports are in our Geek Out library as well. Also too, if you think of any other questions after the session, or if you have any other needs, if you're having trouble logging in, you need to have us sign you up for the newsletter, anything like that, you can always reach out to us at geekout@geopath.org. It does look like we had one more question come in. Just wanted to take time to answer that. And I think it's really interesting. Have you come across, Julie, just in the overall experience,
Yes.
it's kind of an interesting question, right? Have you come across any place-based venues formats they've not been able to audit or that require kind of further review, or any interesting kind of stories like that they've run into?
Yeah, I see this from Bobby. Hi, Bobby. The goal is to be able to audit the lion's share of place-based. One of the things that I think is great about out of home is that it's the one channel overall that's just keeps growing, and people are more and more creative in what is considered out of home and where can we put signs and reach people on the go, right? So there surely are some place types and formats that are more challenging than others. I'll say a few examples, some of which we definitely have planned to implement solutions for, but have been a little bit more challenging, are things like seasonal events that happen only on specific dates and times versus something where you can look at a breadth of data over the course of a year, right? So we've looked at event-based partners. Seasonal and event-based is one of the things that should be on the roadmap. Definitely seasonal before event-based. Things that are, one of the challenges, that a question that came up most recently was ferry boats. We can measure the things that were happening at the ferry terminal, but media on the boat itself was a little more challenging. I'm sure we're coming up with a solution for that as well, but that's one of them. Or one of the things that I was working on with an agency partner is what they call distribution types of media formats, like in a bar looking at coasters or branded premiums or things of that nature that are probably further down the priority list for measurement. But those, would be some of those challenges. I'd be curious, Bobby or others, if you had a particular thought or idea behind something that you thought would be most challenging or wondered how we were approaching it. But that's what I got.
Oh, awesome. That's a great answer. So again, just want to say thank you to everybody for joining. Thank you, Julie, for joining us and doing such a great job presenting all this material. So, and as I said, this is just the start. So we want to make sure our members are feeling comfortable and aware of everything around place-based, as well as all the other types of inventory we measure. So again, thank you for joining today, and thank you, Julie. And I'm just stalling in case there's any other last minute questions, but if there aren't, I just want to say, like I said, thanks again. And
thank you all. Thank you for having me, Scott.
Oh yeah, definitely. And just a reminder, and like I said, we'll send out more newsletters about next week's session, where we'll be diving into the Insight Suite and showing you how to actually grab some of that data as well. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.